This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for literally any occasion. Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs of your favorite F1 moments. From Ricciardo's McHorsey entrance to Kevin's first pole. From Pierre and Yuki's bromance to Inspector Seb. The moments are endless. Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands, gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you're comfortable wearing anywhere. Right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, polos, and bucket hats using the code Dirty Driving. Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere. It's chaos. It's a different type of Sunday scary. It's your newest obsession. It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to your Miami Grand Prix post-weekend episode. Thank you for sticking it out and waiting a day to get this episode. Sunday was the Dirty Driving Miami Grand Prix watch party. Don't worry, I'm workshopping the name for next year. It's a little long, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but I had such a blast, and I just want to take a moment to thank my friends, my family, everyone for coming out to support not only the podcast, but me, and just sit and enjoy a Formula One race together. And I love when my friends and family watch with me because there's always so many questions, great questions that most of the time I don't even think about because it's like in the back of my brain knowledge that I don't necessarily use on like a regular daily basis. So yeah, it was great and lots of great questions, lots of enthusiasm. So yeah, just thanks to everyone for coming if you're listening, and thanks to everyone who wanted to be there but couldn't. And it was great. Really enjoyed it. Shout out to Roger, my dad, for cutting tablecloths and hanging balloons and all the things. So it was a great weekend. But that's why the episode is coming out a little later. I spent Sunday night hanging out with my family. We went and got dinner. And so, yeah, it's Tuesday. Here we go. I still haven't recovered from this weekend. It was definitely less of a fever dream than last year's Miami Grand Prix, but there was still like some weird shit going on that shouldn't really, in my mind, go on during a Formula One weekend. But I think that's thanks to all of the celebrities that are there, all of the influencers that are there, and just how expensive it is to go to a US Grand Prix that I think brings out folks that aren't necessarily the diehard fans of Formula One. So yeah, I just want to talk about a couple of moments that stood out to me, and then we'll get into the racing and we'll wrap up with winners and losers and the standings. So I cannot not mention this because I've been a fan of this movie series forever. I think I have Megan to thank for getting me into the Fast movies, but Fast and the Furious, we all know it. Vin Diesel. How can you not like Vin Diesel? If you think back to the early days when he was in The Pacifier, he's always just been like the dad, the family man in these movies that doesn't really look like a family man, but he is. So Vin Diesel was there. I think I've said his name like 7 times now, with Michelle Rodriguez, his co-star from the Fast movies, and she actually got to do a hot lap with Lando Norris, and she had a blast. And I love that because I feel like in the movies they're always in the fast cars and driving the fast cars, but most of the time it's stunt drivers and all of that, actually probably all of the time. So to see her get to race in like a really fast car with Lando Norris, I don't know, maybe I just thought that was cool because I'm a Fast fan, but love it. I have already have my tickets. I've already got my showtime for Fast 10. John and I are going, so I'm sure I'll report back once I see it. I will say the movies are getting a little out of hand, but that's enough about the Fast and the Furious movies. One thing we absolutely have to discuss is the driver introductions with LL Cool J and will.i.am. I am still like trying to process. I've watched the video a couple of times, and LL Cool J did a phenomenal job. I was like waiting for him to mispronunciate someone's name, but he didn't. He did a good job. He kind of messed up BOTAS a little, but I think we've all been there. It was interesting, and I've read people who loved it. I've read opinions from people who hated it. That most of the drivers did not like it, except for, Lewis Hamilton, which I think this is the one thing, maybe not the first thing, but it's one of the few things that Lewis and I do not agree on. I personally hated the driver intros. I'm sorry. I know who all of the drivers are. Most fans of Formula One know who all the drivers are. This just felt like adding to the spectacle of A, people not knowing who the drivers are, B, wanting to add to the entertainment of the event, and C, I just feel like it's a waste of our time. And I feel like it's a waste of the driver's time. For years, they've been asking for less things. We tried moving interviews to Friday, but that made Friday busier, so we moved them back to Thursday. We've tried this, we've tried that, but now we're trying something that's adding to their pre-race ritual. And George Russell said that's an additional 30 minutes that we're in our suits, we're out there sweating, we're not focused, yada, yada, yada. Again, I think the concept of it is great. We see it in a lot of American sports. We see it in other sports as well, but it's just not necessary for Formula One. And I'm sorry if you don't know who the drivers are, or maybe you don't know all of them, and it's nice to put a face to the name, but that's what Google is for. And that is my soapbox about that. It felt unnecessary. One other thing that happened in the pre-race spectacle, if you will, is Martin Brundle's grid walk. I know we all love it. I know we all cherish it. It's so entertaining. He got a couple of the stars' names correct this time, which was huge. But the moment, it's funny, but it's also like, how dare you, this moment. So Martin Brundle and Jackie Stewart are like standing behind the security line, and Roger Federer is across the way. And Martin Brundle's yelling into the microphone, Roger, Roger, Roger. And he's getting nowhere. So Jackie Stewart's like, F this, dips around security, goes up to Roger. His security guards like flank him, start putting their hands on Jackie Stewart, which is a disgrace, which is a disrespect. If you are going to keep Jackie Stewart, F1 royalty, away from someone he knows, Roger Federer, because you as a security guard don't know how important Jackie Stewart is to the sport, you should be fired. You should be out of here. I'm sorry. If you are going to work at the Formula One race, you should be studying the book like Anne Hathaway had to do in Devil Wears Prada to know everybody's name and what they look like. But no, they clearly didn't, and they put hands on Jackie Stewart, which is my moment of like, how dare you? But the funny thing is, he did it. He got there. He did it. He grabbed Roger. They started chit-chatting. He was like, come over here. Let's talk to Martin. But Martin ran out of time on air, so we didn't actually get to see Martin Brundle interview Roger Federer. That's just one of the fever dream moments of Miami. I don't want to get into all of them. There's so many. The Jonas Brothers were there. Queen Latifah was there. I'm trying to think who else. All these people. And then one thing I did forget to mention is will.i.am. So will.i.am dropped a new track based on Formula One. It talks about Formula One, etc. And he performed an orchestral version of The Formula. That's what the song is called, while LL Cool J was introducing the drivers. So if you haven't gone and listened to The Formula, go check it out. Those are all my fever dreams that I want to talk about. let's get into the real thing while we're here. Let's get into racing. So the coolest thing about the Miami Grand Prix was there were no yellow flags, no safety cars, and no retirements during the race. This was only the 14th retirement-free F1 race in history, with only 10 of them coming from 2015 onwards. That's insane, especially because we had red flags in the practice sessions. We had a red flag in qualies and nothing in the race. So bravo to everyone. So happy everyone had a phenomenal race, or almost a phenomenal race, but so happy everyone at least finished it. Kicking it off with our winner of the Miami Grand Prix, Max Verstappen. We were not expecting this. I was not expecting this. I was full sending a Checo win because Max started the race in ninth. And that is because in qualies, Max made a mistake in turn 5, and he was on his second attempt for his hot lap when Charles Leclerc crashed and brought out the red flag, ending the session early. Qualies was not resumed, so wherever everyone was, 1 through 10, was where they were going to be for the race. After qualies, Max was asked where he was going to finish the race, and he said, a podium for sure, but I want to win. So that is not great. Winning is not impossible, but it's not going to be easy. He made it look easy. He had overtakes left and right. He passed both Charles Leclerc and Kevin Magnussen in one sweep while those two were battling it out themselves. He held on to his hard tires until the very end, where he switched to softs and was easily able to repass Checo for the win. I have to hand it to him. It was great racing by him. He did great, but at the end of the day, he's got the car that allows him to do that. I will say Niki Lauda was the last driver to win a race from ninth place. He did so at the French Grand Prix that took place in 1984, and only 4 total races have been won from ninth. So props to Max. He also took driver of the day. He has 8 different wins from 8 different positions since the start of 2022. And he tied Sebastian Vettel's record of 38 wins for Red Bull. It was his 24th consecutive race finish, the longest of anyone on the grid, and now he's 14 points ahead in the championship. So it's a Max Verstappen weekend. It's a Red Bull weekend. I think that's why I don't have much to say, because they just ran away with it. They did, like they have been. And I was expecting Max to struggle a little bit more here, but he made the right decision. The team made the right decision, putting him on those hards, and he carried it until the very end. And he was there. He was in front of everyone by lap 15. Fernando Alonso predicted that he would be passed by Max in lap 25, and Max did it 10 laps faster. Which means Checo was in second. Checo did not have a good start to the weekend. His FPs were not great. Practice sessions, he was not pleased with how he was performing. But then in quali, because of Charles Leclerc and Max's mistake, he took pole. And it was his first pole at any other venue other than Jeddah. And he said it's the worst weekend he's had up to qualifying. He was able to capitalize on Max's mistake, but in the race, his medium tire was not good enough compared to the Max hard tires. This is the 4th 1-2 finish for Red Bull this season, and this is Checo's 30th podium. So congrats to him. I wish he would have won. I want Checo to beat Max this year. I don't know if Christian Horner is going to allow that to happen, but I'm praying for it. In third, once again this season, was Fernando Alonso. He has now scored more podium finishes this season than his previous 7 combined. And the one thing I have to say about good old Fernando is that towards the end of the race, he says, what position is Lance in? He had a great move into turn 1. And we're all like, huh? How does he know that? Well, in turn 11, there's a big Jumbotron, a big TV screen. And Fernando, after the race, was like, yeah, I was watching. I was watching every time I passed. And I saw Lance make a great move into turn 1, and I wanted to know where he was. And everyone is just like, what? You're racing in P3 in the middle of a Grand Prix, and you're watching what's happening elsewhere on the track on the Jumbotron? No one else. No one else could do that except for him. I love him. George Russell He's up next. He topped the charts in FP1, and we thought we had a hopeful Mercedes weekend, but it did not go so well on FP2 and FP3. In quali, he landed 6th. In the race, he had great overtakes, especially on Sainz, to get up to 4th and battle for it. And the 4th place position ties his best result of the season and closes the gap to teammate Lewis by 16 points. Carlos Sainz had the better weekend of the two Ferraris. In quali, he was in 3rd, and it was his first top 3 start of the season. But both Ferraris had to say after the race that the car was just unpredictable when pushed to the limit. So Ferrari needs to figure their shit out. Again, that's something I say every week, but hopefully one day we'll get there. Lewis Hamilton was next in 6th. He said FP2 going from topping the charts in FP1 to dropping down to 7th was just a kick in the gut. In quali, he qualified 13th, did not make it to Q3, eliminating Q2, his first since Monza 2022, and it was his worst qualifying showing in the United States. He left the garage way too late and absolutely struggled in Sector 1. However, in the race, he gained 7 places from his starting position. Charles Leclerc came in 7th. Like I said, he crashed out in qualies. He also crashed out in the same exact spot in FP2, bringing out the red flags for both. He said it's not acceptable. 2 days, 2 mistakes, same corner. So yeah, it's not good, and I'm harsh on myself, but today was not good. Both Alpines made it into the points this weekend, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon taking 8th and 9th. This was Pierre's first time scoring points in the US. And an interesting thing to note is the Alpine CEO, Laurent Rossi, had a few choice comments about the team and their start to the season. He said it's disappointing, it's actually bad. I'm noting not only an obvious lack of performance and rigor in the delivery, but also a potential state of mind is not up to this team's past standards. This year ended up starting with a flawed performance and flawed delivery. Our position in the standing is not worthy of the resources we've spent. Those are some harsh words coming from a team CEO. And I'll be interested to see how Alpine turns it around and honestly how the team reacts to those comments. We have not heard anything since, but he is the CEO. I guess he can say whatever he wants. Rounding out our points was Kevin Magnussen, who qualified 4th. It was his first time out qualifying Nico Hulkenberg all year, his first Q3 appearance this year, and Haas's first ever top 4 start in a Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda finished 11th, the 4th time in 6 races he has finished just outside the points, and the other 2 he has finished P10. He knows what he's doing this year, and I'm really proud of him. Lance Stroll came in 12th, followed by Valtteri Bottas, who did not have the pace to maintain a points position. He did make a Q3 appearance, both his and Alfa Romeo's first Q3 appearance this year. Going down the line, we had Alex Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, Guan Yu Zhao, Lando Norris, who picked up damage in lap 1 thanks to Nyck de Vries hitting him in the behind at the start. In 18th, we had Nyck de Vries, who had that first corner error. He said he locked up and ran into the back of Norris. He had a flat spot on his tires and then suffered vibrations for the rest of the race due to that. Oscar Piastri rounds us out in 19th with Logan Sargent, the homeboy, in 20th. Oscar Piastri did have a brake wire problem for most of the race. I think it started around lap 6. So the fact that he stayed in front of Logan Sargent, didn't retire at all, props to him. And Logan had this to say: I put the car in a place I shouldn't have, when he was talking about his lap 1 damage, which wrecked his home race. He came in very early for a new front wing. And that's that. That was the race. It was good. It wasn't great. There were good overtakes. We had Max battling up for the front. We had Lewis battling Kevin Magnussen. We had Charles battling Kevin Magnussen. It was a good race. A lot more solid than last year, but there's a lot more ways that this can be improved. And I think, and that is something that I'm going to talk about in next week's Spy episode. We're going to talk about the entertainment versus the sport of it all, and maybe what F1 can be doing to make races a little bit better. And it might involve a new tire manufacturer and maybe not building tracks around stadiums. My winners for the week are Max Verstappen. How could you not? A 9-1 for the record books. Fernando Alonso back on podium. Kevin Magnussen stayed in the points considering there were no DNFs and the top 4 teams were doing great. He deserves to be a winner. And then Alpine, because both of the cars got into the points. My losers. Sergio Perez, only because he lost out to Max. McLaren, poor showing. They need to still continue. They still need to get their shit together. We thought it might have been better, but it is not. Nick DeVries, another loser and needs to go. That's all I can say about him today. And then Alfa Romeo, once again, not showing out. My honorable mention is George Russell. He did a great job this weekend and shows us weekend after weekend how much potential the Mercedes car has. And he's pushing it to the limit and getting the results out that he should be. He's making the best out of the worst case scenario. In other news, Adrian Newey extends contract with Red Bull. He's the chief technical officer and the one to thank for all of their success. Christian Horner said, "We don't tend to talk about employees' contracts publicly, but Adrian has been with us for a long time, and that will continue for several seasons to come. So we'll see if the dominance continues." And then the other thing that I just wanted to note, there's not much on it, but Miami is in talks of becoming a night race next year. Could deliver better racing as the track temperature won't be as high, but again, it's Miami. I don't have a lot of hopes for this fever dream of a race, and I'm already starting to mentally prepare for Vegas and all the shit that's going to come out of that. In the standings, we had Pierre Gasly gaining 4 places in the Drivers' Championship, moving up to 10th, while Oscar Piastri fell 3 positions to 14th. Alpine, because of both of their drivers being in the points, moved up 1 position in the Constructors' Championship to 5th. Next week is a bye week, but before we know it, we'll be back for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Fingers crossed, it's going to deliver some epic racing. And thanks for listening. Again, this was a quick one. Not a lot to discuss, and we got through it. So once again, thanks to everyone for coming to the watch party. So thankful for all of you, and so thankful for everyone who listens every week. It means a lot to me. I don't say it enough, but thank you so much for being along this journey with me and supporting me every step along the way. I appreciate you, and I hope you know that. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Dirty Driving. Until next time, stay dirty. This podcast is brought to you by Red Racer Books, a children's book series about the marvelous world of motorsports. Looking to get the kiddos in your life interested in Formula One? The series includes the ABCs of Racing, which teaches concepts about racing with Red Racer as your guide. The 34-page book is full of gorgeous illustrations inspired by actual tracks and racing situations around the world. The series also includes the book All About Race Cars, a guide to Formula One race cars. Red Racer is joined by Roxy the Engineer, and they walk you through all the ins and outs of F1. This book is packed with 40 pages of beautiful illustrations teaching STEM facts about F1 cars. Red Racer Books is on a mission to give kids in the US and beyond a global perspective on sportsmanship, diversity, science, and technology. Dirty Driving listeners can get 20% off Red Racer Books' entire series using the code Dirty Driving. Head over to redracerbooks.com to buy the kiddos or the adults in your life their new favorite book.